Welcome back to episode 3 of season 2 of the Daniel Smith's Colour Showdown. This episode has been voted by my dear Patreons. One of the perks of becoming my Patreon is that you get to have a say in the content of this channel, and in particular in this case in what colours I compare in this series. So we had a vote over on my Patreons earlier this month, and this was by far the most popular choice, comparing the Pyrrole red with the permanent red. Now, they are both single pigments. I know this looks like it's two pigments. It's my error. When I came to create the swatch cards and writing down the pigment codes, I thought it was two pigments with something funny going on with the second pigment code, but no, through researching for this video I learned that it's actually one pigment. It's a one particular kind of a PR107, so they are both a single pigment. They are both highly vibrant reds, as you can see. One interesting thing about these two colors for today's video is that there is actually quite a big difference in the price of these colors. Pyrrole red is series 3, permanent red is series 1. Series 3, now series 3 in Jackson, where I get my paints from, it is £14.90, and series 1 is £11. Now that is a price difference of £3.90, which works out to be roughly $5 difference, US dollars difference per tube. That is quite a big difference between the two. So I'd be interested to see if the Pyrrole red is worth the $5 extra, or can we get away by having a better deal with the permanent red? It'll be really interesting to see. So let's get painting with these two colors, and then we'll come back and have a good look at both of them. First up is Pyrrole red, and it is made out of the pigment PR254, which is Diketo Pyrolo Pyrrole red. Daniel Smith says, this fire engine red is cleaner than cadmium or permanent red. It is a modern synthetic organic pigment. While close in value to its cousin the Pyrrolines, it disperses more evenly and is less granular. It is a Series 3 paint. It is classified as excellent in light fastness, semi-transparent, medium staining, and non-granulating. Next up is permanent red, and again it is a single pigment color of PR170 F3RK-70. It's a pretty long code. It is Naphthol AS Carbamide F3RK-70. Daniel Smith says, a stop sign red, this red diffuses well with water, a treat when painting wet into wet or damp passages. The fussy edges this technique produces bring filled poppies to mind. It is a Series 1 colour. It is classified as very good, which is one down from the excellent. It is semi-transparent, high staining, and non-granulating. So here we are already starting to see the price difference coming in, with the permanent red being Series 1 and being less light fast than the Pyrrole red, which is Series 3, being excellent in light fastness. Welcome back. The paints have dried. This side is the Pyrrole red, and this side is the permanent red. First impression, I've noticed that the Pyrrole red is a fraction warmer, slightly orangey red, and the permanent red is a slightly cooler, a little bit bluer red. So there is the first difference. But we can also see that the two colors are quite close in behavior as well. So let's take a closer look at each of the tests we did for these two colors. Before we get on with our usual comparison in looking at how the two colors do gradated washes, I just wanted to give you a closer look at the two colors And I hope that the camera can pick up that this is a slightly warmer, more orangier color, and this is a more bluer, cooler red. The color difference is very subtle, but if you're looking for a very specific shade of red, then that is a useful information to decide by. I can also see that the Pyrrole red, which is this side, it's a little thicker in color. It's closer to like the thickness of a cadmium color, whereas the permanent red is a little bit more translucent in color. They're both just as intense as each other, but this just kind of feels a little bit thicker. I know that's not a technical term, but the permanent red definitely feels like a more translucent red. Now we are going to look at the washes for both of the colors. This side is the Pyrrole red and this side is the permanent red. They both do gradated washes pretty well, but as you can see here and on all the paper samples, that they are prone to cauliflowering. However, they do make very, very beautiful flat red washes when used at its full strength straight out of the tube as well. So I think the best use for these kind of reds in terms of washes is to use it when you need a bright red wash rather than a paler, more watered down washes. And if I have to pick a side, I would say that Pyrrole red gives a flatter wash, like you can see here, here, here. And the permanent red does struggle to give that flat wash that a Pyrrole red can do. As you can see here and here, it's a little bit more uneven. So if you are looking to do a nice, bright, flat red background, then Pyrrole red is going to be your friend. In terms of opacity, this up here is the Pyrrole red and this down here is the permanent red, and you can still see the slight hue difference here. They are both classified as semi-transparent, and I would agree with that. The interesting thing I've noticed is that the Pyrrole red is classified as mid-staining and permanent red as high staining. Now, you know, in the lifting test, I always do the same number of strokes and same number of pattings. So I do 3 strokes with a clean wet brush, pat it, and I repeat that process 3 times just to try to make the lifting test as even and fair as possible. I did notice on this certain paper, I haven't tested it on other paper, the Pyrrole red, which is supposed to be the less staining color, I got a lot more staining than the permanent red, which is supposed to be the higher staining color. They are both pretty staining though, so you're never going to get it really back to a bright white. In terms of glazing, they both glaze very well, very nice even glazes because of the high staining properties of these 2 colors. When you get a high staining property, you usually get an easier job in glazing as well. In terms of gauzing, neither do much in terms of linear patterns, and indeed they don't really make a very pretty texture either. Now, in terms of salting is one of the areas that you will see a bigger difference between these 2 colors. The Pyrrole red produced a much stronger reaction to the salt than the permanent red did. Permanent red did react a little bit to the salt in terms of the areas where the salt has been going back to white, but with the classic salt feathering effect that I certainly like a lot, you get a much better result with the Pyrrole red than with the permanent red. In terms of water bloom, I'd say they are pretty much the same in terms of how much feathering it gets in using this technique. Now let's take a look at how the 2 colors mixes with other colors. This side is the Pyrrole red and this side is the permanent red. And for reference, these are the 12 colors we mixed each of the colors with. So here you will see over here is what these colors look like mixed in with the Pyrrole red. And here is what these colors will look mixed with the permanent red. Since both of these colors are very clean reds, they make beautiful mixes of oranges up here and makes lovely pinks. It actually makes quinacridone rose even brighter than it already is, and it makes these beautiful wine colors with the quinacridone violets and mixes lovely two-tone violets with the ultramarine violet and the ultramarine blue. Now with both of these paints, because they are both sit in that nice zone of a mid red, the complementary color is going to sit somewhere between the phthalo turquoise and the viridian kind of color, so anywhere from the blue greens to the pure greens. And you do get a wide range of the very muted, inky, dark grey colours. And in particular, these two colours mixed with the viridian or phthalo green will produce one of the darkest grey, almost close to a black colour mixes you can have around the colour wheel. It is certainly my go-to colour combo if I need like a really dark grey. You can certainly get a darker grey than what I have here. In terms of differences between the two, there's not much. There really isn't much between the two. They both behave pretty similar, make bright oranges and reds and violets and wide range of inky muted colors. I could pick the difference between these samples, but a lot of the variations in that is just human error, in that you are going to get a wide range of hues from just mixing two different colors. I don't think in terms of mixing that there is that much of a behavioral difference. It's quite strange because in the first episode of this season we did the Hansa Yellow Deep with the New Gamboge, which looked very much similar until we mixed it, and they behaved very differently in mixing. Whereas here they do look different slightly, but they do look different. But when it comes to mixing, there's really not that much between the two. Now, if you would like a closer look in your own time of these test sheets, I do always post a scanned high resolution image of these paint test sheets over on my Patreon when the video goes out as well. So if you like to do your own comparisons, you are more than welcome to do so over on my Patreon. In conclusion, these two colors, the Pyrrole red and the permanent red, are very similar indeed. There is a hue difference, however, with the Pyrrole red being a slightly warmer oranger red and the permanent red being a cooler, slightly bluer red. There is also a textural difference in that the Pyrrole red produces like a thicker, closer to a cadmium type color washes, whereas the permanent red is a slightly more translucent look to them. Behavior-wise, the two colors are pretty similar, with the exception of if you do a lot of work with using salt. The Pyrrole red definitely reacts much more to the salt than the permanent red does. So I would say that those 2 points of the slight hue difference and the salting reaction levels are the only two differences that these two colors really have, certainly in terms of what can be observed from this selection of tests that we did in this video. As for which one I would pick, well, I already have the permanent red in the 12 mixing colors that I use for this series. I have it right here, this exact same color, and I don't feel like there's a big enough difference between these two colors for me to jump ship. However, if I ever come to a situation where I need a good flat wash of bright red, and I'm not that bothered about if it's slightly more orange or if it's slightly more blue, then I'll be sure to use the Pyrrole red because it does produce a much flatter, much more even wash when used at full strength than the permanent red can produce. The permanent red is slightly more translucent, so you are going to get slightly more unevenness to your wash. Which one would you go for? Would you go for the Pyrrole red or the permanent red? Do let me know in the comments down below, and if you have either of these colors or even both, then let us know in the comments down below how you like to use them and what you find these colors to be most useful for. If you found this video to be interesting and useful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.